Go. And go.
Good afternoon. Hi there. How are you? My name is Pat Campbell, radio talk show host from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And you are listening to Red Pill 101, episode 19. Today's topic, can you trust women? And I am joined with by Rollo Tomasi, the rational male. Rollo, how you doing, buddy?
Real good, real good. In the new studio today, in the bunker today. Yeah, I'm experimenting. I think what I'm gonna do pretty soon is I'm gonna do just a solo show, just do an Ask Me Anything, like an AMA here, right? Because I'm kind of, and I just want to throw this out here right at the beginning, is because I've got this new dedicated space that I'm working on. I've got all studio lighting and everything else that's going on pretty well. I am going to be experimenting with OBS Studio, and just so that we can actually have us on the screen at the same time, and we can do it's a little bit more professional and just kind of up our game a little bit here on Red Pill 101. So that's coming up soon, probably sometime during this week. I'm going to it's basically it'll be an AMA, but it's just to test the waters kind of thing with what I'm doing with OBS.
Real quick before we get into the topic, I was absent last week. I know you didn't say anything on air. Part of the reason I was gone was I had to go back to Pennsylvania to visit my dad. My dad's 83 years old. He's dying of bladder cancer, and it was very important for me to go back home. In fact, I did a podcast on that on my local show Friday, and Rollo actually sort of piggybacked on that because we sort of changed topics, and you talked about your dad who passed away, I think at the age of 72 from Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with guys, end of life issues, especially with dads, it's a big deal. You've written at least probably about 4 articles that tap into that. And maybe that's something we're going to do down the road with the Red Pill as well. But today, today we want to concentrate on, can you trust a woman? First, I think we got to define some terms, because nowadays, a lot of terms are used as compartment words. When somebody says love, it means something different to you, different to me. So when we talk about trust, what does trust mean to you? Define that word for me.
That's a difficult one, actually. Simply because, well, like what you said before, it's a compartment word. It's one of these terms that we can just sort of apply anything that we want to in it. If you say I am such and such, then what does that mean? I'm sure you're probably familiar with it's a logical fallacy. It's called the no true Scotsman fallacy, right? So it's
careful. My dad's from Glasgow. Careful,
right? Yeah, I thought you were Irish. No true Irishman, right? But so what I mean by that is when you say a particular thing, or when you classify yourself as whatever it is, whatever the term is, you are you're basically saying that you are the example of whatever that particular thing is. And anybody else who doesn't meet your definition of whatever that term is, then no true Scotsman, no true Christian, no true Republican would do anything like that, right? So it's you're constantly coming back to this. So there needs to be a definition of terms there as to what is, and I think we should also, actually, before we even start this, is to define what a compartment term is. And it's the same thing that we were just talking about. It's like one of these things, like when people want to talk about it's really easy to talk about compartment words when they are emotions, like what is love, right? Or what is trust? It's like this. It's because it's very subjective. Those are subjective terms, right? So what is trust? I would say that trust is, like, remember when I was telling you, we were talking about Rich Cooper was always asking me these questions, like, how do you vet your wife, right? Well, my first response to him was, she needs to be able to trust you with her life. Simply because, literally, if she's going to be your wife, she has to trust you with her life, trust you with the life of their kids, that kind of thing. So what does that mean? Does that mean that, like, where does trust begin and where does it end? And I think that when we're talking about issues of trust, it'd be really easy for me to, like, throw out this list of qualifiers of what would make a trust or not. And this, other people are going to say, well, that's not what trust means to me. Well, I'm just going to throw some of these terms out here. Okay. So first of all, is this somebody that has your back, I think is the first one. That's the easiest way to say it. Is
Bingo.
it somebody who has your back? Are you, like, people have always asked me about like how my marriage works, right? And I'm going to classify things here in terms of marriage or in terms of like male female, but remember, trust is also something that can be applied to guys that you work with, guys who are in your another aspect of this might be like the military, right? Most guys, when they get out of the military, they want to go back in because they only know the trust between, they want to stay in that tribe. You trust your brothers, you trust your squad, you trust the people that you're working with. Hopefully, if you're a partner. I was just talking. I just wrote a pretty long tweet last night before I went to bed about how men and brothers will fight one another, and how that is like, as much as I have fought with my brother, I still trust my brother. And sometimes maybe that's misplaced. Like, you think, oh, well, I shouldn't do that. Like, people will say, well, do you really trust him? It's like, so where is that? Is it, there's a certain amount of doubt that goes into trust as well. As like, can I trust this person? Like, for instance, if suddenly there was actually this video show where they would make up these really horribly bad scenarios, and then they would call somebody and say, hey, do you have my back? So it'd be something like this. Like, the guy would say, he would call his friend and just tell his friend, hey man, I just killed so-and-so. Will you help me bury the body? But not like, I'm just giving you the basics of this, but like, can you help me with this really bad situation? Or, hey man, if I don't pay $10,000 to the Gambino family, they're gonna, for gambling debts, they're gonna come and kill me. Can you help me out? Kind of thing. It's like this test of trust kind of thing. It's like, where do you draw the line for something like that? So as far as trust is concerned, I think first of all, it's does this person have my back? Is this person somebody who is trustworthy? Right? Is this somebody, because when you trust somebody, there is a certain element of faith involved, right?
Yes.
You have to understand that, like, for me I've trusted a lot of people who were not worthy of my trust and proved not worthy of my trust.
Right.
So is that person somebody who is consistent, somebody that is regular, somebody that is who they say they are, right? When we deal with people who are liars, right? We say, well, they broke my trust. Well, you're trusting them to be on the same wavelength as you are, to say, hey, I can trust you with a secret. I can trust you with money. Okay. I remember when I was a kid, my dad taught my brother and I a really tough lesson, which was like, he would take like his wallet, or he would take like a $20 bill, and he would put that $20 bill on like the coffee table, and
see if you take it,
to see if it would be gone, right? And to see if somebody's going to rip you off or whatever. It's like, and my dad would say, worst beating we'd ever get was if you would take the 20, because it's like this, it says you have this test of trust, right? Can I trust you with that kind of stuff? And it was just, it's my dad being my dad, really, but it was, but I understand why he did it. He was teaching us a lesson with that. And
my mom, when I was growing up, we took care of an elderly couple, right? And we had to clean out their house when the one died and the other had to go to a long-term care facility. And they were a couple that was like raised in depression kind of stuff. And anyways, going through their closet, my brother Philip found $10,000 in the closet. $10,000, okay? Now, I'm in a really big family. We were strapped for cash. This would have really helped out the house. Nobody would have known. My mother said, we've got to give it to the attorney. She made us do the right thing. I mean, and I guarantee you, she was tempted to take it too. But that was a life lesson for all of us, and it had to do with trust. You're a Campbell. People should be able to trust you. And it's the money thing, just like you said. They had a buddy of mine, Steubenville, Ohio. He had a hot dog vending thing. The bank truck, like the bank truck that went by, left one of the bags out. It had 50 grand in it. He could have walked away with the money. But he picked up his cell phone. He called and had them come pick it up. Wow. Because he said it was the right thing to do. Plus, all the buildings around, he said, said, Pat, he said, I guarantee you somebody saw me pick up that.
Or there's always a video camera.
Right. Or there's dye in there or something like that, you know? So,
yeah. So, I mean, well, here's the thing. It's like, if, are you really trustworthy because you did that? Or are you trustworthy, or are you just doing that because you're like, okay, there's probably a camera somewhere and I'm going to get busted if I'm not like what I'm supposed to do. So there's that issue. Now I'm going to dig into the meat of the matter right here, because a lot of guys, I think one of the reasons I wanted to cover this topic is because a lot of guys, they will get into red pill awareness.
Right.
And I wrote this in the description too. They will suddenly, they have the blinders taken off their eyes, right? They wake up, they unplug from the matrix. They understand, or they get at least enough understanding of women's nature. And they say, I can't trust a woman. I cannot ever trust a woman ever again. Or it'll be a guy who is, who's burned. Like his girlfriend cheated on him, especially after he's trying. Now think about this. Like he's trying to trust this person, right? He's trusting her with, I mean, think about what you trust your girlfriend or your wife with. I mean, now he's trusting her with secrets. He's trusting her with his, well, and I'm just gonna say it, with his vulnerability. Yep. One of the biggest, vulnerable. This is why I get kind of, we really should do a whole show on this, but one of the reasons I kind of get off on the whole vulnerability as game thing is, men are vulnerable in so many different ways. And it's like, you shouldn't wear your vulnerability on your sleeve. Vulnerability is never game, right? And I'll tell you, one of the reasons why I say that is because for you to be in a relationship with a woman requires a certain degree of vulnerability as it is. Okay. That's not like, oh, I'm so vulnerable. I'm like, you're turning your vulnerability into your strength. Vulnerability is never strength. Okay. You have to, as a man, you have to be vulnerable at some point, because if you're going to say, I love you, that's vulnerability. If you're going to marry a woman, particularly in this day and age, you are setting yourself up for the most vulnerable position you could possibly be in. Right. Considering the legal and the social, there is no upside for men in marriage. Right. Okay. So when you do that, you are making yourself vulnerable, and you are trusting that person, trusting that woman not to do all the things that she could do. Mm-hmm. Right. And this is another quote I have is, not every woman would do something, but every woman can do something.
By the way, real quick here, before the show, I just put a feeler out to get a response from my female listeners. Okay. Mm-hmm. Can you trust a woman? Okay. One's about 65. The other's maybe early 40s. The other's late 30s. All three of them categorically said, no, absolutely not. I'm a woman. You cannot trust a woman. All three of them.
Wow.
I mean, because even they don't trust women.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't. Yeah. Now here's the thing is like, so when you unplug from the matrix, when you go from being blue pill conditioned to understanding the nature of women a little bit, it becomes very, very difficult to trust women. I get it. Okay. One of the reasons why guys don't want to get married is because of exactly that thing. I can't trust her not to screw me. I can't trust her not to take half of my stuff. I can't trust her not to, because you're putting yourself out there. And I think that what's interesting is like when guys who are blue pill get into that situation, they don't realize the gravity of the risk that they're taking out of sheer ignorance, because they don't know. Right. But they don't, I think they believe that vulnerability is a strength, first of all, but they also believe that women will appreciate and understand that vulnerability, like the overwhelming. I mean, if you were to get into a situation, I mean, hell, even getting into just you don't even have to get married. If you just get into a long-term relationship with a woman, there's still risk that is all downside risk just for men. And I think blue pill guys believe that women understand that, and they're like, hey, it's okay. We're all in the same boat. I love you. You love me. That kind of stuff. But again, it's not that every woman would. It's any woman can.
They could.
Yeah,
they
any woman could do that. Yeah.
Let me throw a couple things at you with trust. Okay. The only people that I've ever given trust to openly, freely, is my 5 children. It's sort of a birthright with them. With everybody else, it is something that is given slowly over time, and it's earned. And once it's violated, seldom, if ever, can you get it back. Okay. With very few exceptions, that kind of trust. Trust to me, we talked off air here. I'm sort of old school on this. I'm sort of hardcore on this too. Trust and loyalty go hand in hand.
Yes.
Those are the two things I value most. And you know, you joked around, but I was just talking with a buddy of mine back in Pennsylvania when I got back about trust. He's the kind of guy, if I called him today, for real, and I said, I got to get rid of a body. Can you help me? I got to get down to a pig. I'm serious. I got to get to a pig farm in Muskogee. He would be here to help me. He would be here to help me. That's the kind of, it's almost like, it's one of the things I think about Trump. Trump is almost like a mob boss because his number one thing is loyalty. If you're loyal, he will reward you. But the minute you turn on him, he will slit your throat and just throw you out the door. But those two things go hand in hand. And it's difficult to have that kind of trust with a guy, and virtually impossible to have it with a woman.
Well, look at that. Look at the differences here, though. Okay, so like you've thrown out a lot of kind of, I think, subjective terms here. Now, what I'm saying is like there's loyalty. Okay, what does loyalty entail? Loyalty is something that you earn, right? You'd be loyal to. Respect, again, is something that we earn. Trust, something that you earn, something that is merit-based. Okay, now I'm approaching this from a male perspective because the male perspective is based on merit. It's meritorious. That's why we have dominance hierarchies. It's like, remember what I was talking to you about, like transferring resources, how women like do it collectively, and men like, okay, you get $10 and you get $5 and you did a good job, so you get X amount of dollars. It's like, if you do a good job, you're supposed to get more. Right? So that applies, that male nature applies to our interpretations of respect, of trust, of loyalty, all that kind of stuff. Now I'll also just throw this out there as well, because I know that this is going to come as this is going to be part of the conversation, and that is, men will say you can only trust a woman to be a woman. You can only trust her to do the things that she is biologically hardwired to do. And I'll just tell you right now, 100% agree with that. Okay, that's not what this conversation is about. This conversation is about something beyond that. Like whatever else is beyond that is risk management. Okay, like I can say, I know, and people always say this to me, like they'll say, well, don't you trust your wife? Don't you trust your daughter? Don't you, it's like, yes, I do, but I understand. I understand their goal. I trust them to be women. Like
when you say that, because I want to throw this out at you, you can throw it back at me. When you say you trust your wife or you trust your daughter, is that 100%? Is that implicitly, or is that with, maybe some conditions?
Depending on what it is, yeah.
I trust but verify.
At this stage of the game, I do trust my wife implicitly because we both are on the same team. Now, I understand that I'm setting myself up by doing that, and I also understand. Like, I have a post. Damn it, I didn't put it in the description. I've got a post it's an essay, and it's in the first book actually. It's called The Pet. Okay, what the pet is I described this situation when I was younger. I worked on a stage crew at one of the casinos up here, and there was a point where I was working for a magic show, like as a cabaret show, and there was a point where I had to roll on to stage like wild animals. Like there was a tiger, there was a black panther, there was a monkey, there was all these, that's part of the show, right? And the trainer of these animals, these wild animals, was the only person besides the magician and his assistant who got to be anywhere near those animals. And because I was the one that had to move them on and move them off, I still had to at least, move it was basically this big giant acrylic aquarium that they would put the Black Panther into for one of these shows. Right. And at one point that it was covered with like a satin kind of veil of some kind, and it kind of slipped off. And I was like literally like face to face, like maybe like 12 inches away from the big head of this thing. Right. And it will put the fear of God into you. You will get that adrenaline rush. You'll be like, like that survival thing. And there's basically like maybe 3 inches of acrylic between you and a wild animal that would rip your head off. Right. Well, the thing is like before that, you're looking at these animals and they seem like pets, right? They seem like something you can trust, right? You're playing around with them, and you think of them as like a house cat instead of a Black Panther that used to live in the jungles or whatever, Now, granted, it's trained, it's around, but the guy told me, the trainer told me, this is the lesson is like the moment you treat them as if they are your pets is the moment they will go feral on you.
Yep.
And they will tear your head off. And it's exactly what Siegfried, I think it was Siegfried and Roy or something like that.
Sure.
Were back in I think it was like the late 90s or maybe early 2000s, where they had those albino, those white tigers.
Yep.
And again, they're treating it like a pet because they believe that there's that trust between the trainer and the animal. Right.
But the animal is being true to its nature.
The animal is being true to its nature.
So
I use that as I use that as a parallel in that essay to say, look, the moment that slips from your brain, thank you for that $5, Joe. The moment that slips out of your head is the moment women go feral on you. The moment you let up on your mission, the moment you let up on being the guy that she fell in love with, that's when she goes feral. That's when her feral nature starts to take over. It's the same thing with a wild animal or with a woman. If you are treating her like a pet, if you're not on your game, if you don't, in the back of your head, if you haven't internalized the idea that the possibility exists that she could go feral. I'm not saying she will. I'm just saying that she could. Right? It's not all women will, but every woman could.
That's why women have like a sixth sense where if there's a guy out there that's just too trusting, too naive, you're game. You're a beta. You're going to be taken advantage of.
Right.
And I think I told you we had a story here locally. There's the old adage, "Hell hath no fury like that of a woman scorned." We had a lady who ran for city council in Tulsa. Right. She was involved in a very tumultuous divorce. And it came out, she actually had hired a private investigator to plant kitty porn on her husband's laptop.
Wow.
I mean, that is sick. And still, despite all that, and the fact that it became public knowledge, she still ran for office. Fortunately, she lost. But it just tells you, at one time those two were madly in love. But man, the minute things go bad, all of that information they've got on you, all the goods they have on you, they will turn on you like a rabid dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and again, it's... would every woman do that? No. But can every
woman can?
That's the thing. There's no insurances again. So that's where the trust comes from. Mm-hmm. That's where now we also have to separate trust from just kind of like blind faith. Okay. And here's where guys get in trouble with trust when it comes with women. When we're talking about, like, say, the Anthony Bourdain side of things. Okay. Anthony Bourdain was just a really good illustration of a guy who, on the outwardly appearing seemed very, very alpha, right? Everybody thought he was the bad boy, right? Leather jackets, and he just didn't give a shit about anything. He's just living his life and going through the world on his own terms, kind of thing. Well, what happens is, as soon as he gets a woman in his life, he trusts her implicitly. I mean, I feel like, from what I know about him and Asia Argento and the wife that was before her, it's like he is at the mercy of his own internal belief set. Okay. Right. So when guys are blue pill conditioned, they're blue pill conditioned to believe in blank slate equalism. That's one of the first things. But that blank slate equalism then sort of shifts into pedestalizing women or putting women as your mental point of origin. And it's, like I said, it starts from a very young age and keeps going on past that. But what happens is that basic belief, or that basic idea that men and women are just the same, what that leads guys to do is to adopt their game or build an intersexual understanding of women around that blank slate equalism, so that when they meet that person, they have no other reason not to trust, right? They think that by trusting that is an element of game. They think that by trusting that, or to was it when guys bypass the arousal stage of game and they go straight into rapport, or they go straight into comfort, right? There is that trust building during that they like that because they think that that's where the meat of it is. Like, if a woman can trust you, then she will be more likely to have sex with you. That's what women always say. I need a guy I'm comfortable with. I need a guy I can trust, right? Well, yeah, as you're spooning on the bed and not getting anywhere with that woman, right? But see, guys have this idea, because what they do is they have a concept of trust in their heads, and then they hear what a woman talks about when it comes to trust, and they feel as if they can make themselves more trustworthy, that women will reciprocate that trust. Like,
Right.
I'm worthy of trust. Are you? Here's my trust. You
Well,
give me your trust.
Here's, and I want to get into this today too. Beware, not just the Ides of March, but beware the woman that asks you or baits you and says, tell me your secrets. Tell me something nobody else knows.
Yep.
Guys,
Samson and Delilah.
Never take the bait. And I don't know what it is, but for me personally, it always seems to be a blonde chick. I don't know why, but that's always been my experience. Never take the bait, because it back to my my adage about the dog there. As you know, as sure as the sun comes up in the east and sets in the west, she will use that. She will, when she turns on you, and she will, when she turns on you, she's going to use that against you and will turn on you like a rabid dog. They're gathering information. Right now, you're close, you're good together, but just think about the stuff you're giving her that could actually be used to destroy you.
Right. And that's where guys think that by giving that, like, they believe that, first of all, we're taught from a very early age that we should respect women just because this goes back to men having a different concept of respect, a different concept of love, different concept of loyalty than women do. But they believe that they believe that women share that. That's another mistake.
That's the thing. Trust does not mean the same thing to women that it does to guys.
Exactly. It does not mean the same thing as for love. Is there are different concepts of love between the sexes, different concepts of respect, different concepts of trust. These are those, again, we're we're going to talk about what container words or whatever. Those containers are defined by whoever's defining them, right? Whether it's men or
compartment words.
Compartment words. Yeah. So, I wanted to talk about the fact that these guys will implicitly trust women because they believe that they will set themselves apart as guys. They will be unique because they do that.
I'm special.
Exactly. So when it comes to, and I'm going to write this down. We should do an episode about beta game and how guys, everybody in this whole world, every guy you know, every girl you know has game. They have some.
We need a stenographer working on the side.
Seriously, I know. I need to mark that. Yeah, exactly. But
strike that from the record.
Every person you know has game in some. Every person you know has an idea in their head how best to go from being single to meeting a member of the opposite sex, to being their girlfriend, being their boyfriend, to getting married. They have this idea. Now, how well that actually works and how misguided that actually is are two different things. Okay. Yeah. So when a guy is using what I call beta game, it's these guys who'd never learned game. They did, I should say, but they learned it from their environment. They learned it from their feminine primary upbringing. They learned it from the media. They learned it from all of these guys. All of this outside influence, and they've adopted it because it sounds deductively right. I should just implicitly trust this person.
Let me throw a quick example you use on the program a couple of times. Women will tell you when you're dating them, when you're married to them, whatever, long-term relationship, size doesn't matter. The minute you guys break up, he's got a small dick. She's telling everybody, her girlfriends, all your friends, everybody. They flip like that. It's like a rabid dog. It just turns on you.
Size matters. Let's just clear the air here. Size does matter. It does, and I'll tell you why it does. Because what's the first thing a woman insults a guy with? When she's like, "Oh, fuck that guy," or they don't like what you said on Twitter, and they go, "I bet you have a micro penis." Why is that the first?
Why is he driving the big truck? It's making up for something, right?
Yeah, what's he compensating for, right? Okay, if size didn't matter, if it was, what was it? If it's the magic of the magician, not the size of the lawn. Shut up.
So if I'm driving a Prius, am I hung like a horse? What does it mean?
Yeah, I know. What's the opposite of that? So, anyways, what I was going to say is so guys have this. As part of their beta game, that beta game encompasses being trustworthy and to trust women, because they want to give women the benefit of the doubt, because if they feel that if they don't, then they're going to be just like a typical guy. Oh, you don't trust me? You're like a typical guy, right? That's they want to avoid that. They want to avoid that. Well, and so now that what this does, this comes back to the Anthony Bourdain thing. And so when guys go and they put that trust out there, particularly with a woman who is manipulative, who is predatory, just like Asia Argento was very predatory of this guy.
Great choice of terms.
She sees him as a big fish. And another essay I've written, Big Fish. Okay. They see this guy and they understand, women understand if a guy is alpha or if the guy's beta within 5 minutes of meeting that guy. They understand where he is, what his mannerisms is, what his demeanor, all that stuff. They can pick that apart very, very easily, very, very quickly. Why? Because they are evolved to do so. They need, just like guys, when guys see a girl with like big boobs and a nice ass and everything, we evaluate within the first like 10 seconds whether that woman is somebody who has breeding potential or is not breeding potential. Women have similar filters for guys. So what they do is they see that and they play on that trust. They know that the beta is going to do that. They know that the beta is going to put trust in her implicitly, and whatever she decides to do at that point, it's like, don't you trust me? Oh, are you just like those other guys? You know, and so they will use that implicit trust to their own ends. And usually those ends are not a sexual ends. There are ends to provisioning. Can't you watch my kids? Don't you trust me? You know, I'm a single mother. Don't you trust me? You know, those kinds of things. So when a guy is implicitly trustful of women can use that to their advantage.
Well, even when it comes to the issue of birth control, I'm on the pill.
Yeah, there's another one.
You trust me, don't you?
Yeah.
Trust but verify. Ronald Reagan, trust but verify.
Exactly.
Trust but verify.
Red Man Anon dropped this. I gotta hit this. Okay. Red Man dropped a $10 super chat. Thanks, man. Alan Roger Curry says that girls are sluts by nature. You guys mentioned CC is feminism. I'm not sure what CC is right quick. Induced, not biological. Oh, the cock carousel is feminism induced, not biological. I agree with the latter because eggs are more expensive. I disagree with him. What do you think? I think that every woman has the potential to be a slut. Okay, they have that. It just depends.
But not every woman acts on it.
No, yeah, all women. Once again, all women could, but not every woman will. Yeah. So
perfect example.
It's a feral thing again.
That picture you put up about R. Kelly, this was after the Lifetime special back in January. He shows up at a party. All of these chicks are just throwing themselves at him saying, I want to be your next hostage. It's not about R. Kelly. It's about women and the inability to control their natural nature. It's like what it's like what they're, you know, they're set to. They naturally go for the bad boy. Not every woman will, but every woman could.
Okay, here's a very interesting take on all of that. When the internet started and when people began to believe that they could express themselves anonymously and nobody would either judge them for it or would know who they were to judge them for it, that's when you see the true nature of people coming out. So when women are out there, and I think that really in only maybe the last 15 years or so, once social media started to rise to what it is, people started being a little bit more comfortable with expressing themselves because there's no consequences to it. People will say things online that they would never say to another person in face to face, right?
Even on Twitter all the time.
Exactly. So what happens is when women see something like that and they express themselves, it's just like truth serum, right? I mean, it's like getting drunk and you're going to start talking about things that your subconscious might otherwise be inhibited to talk about. It's the same thing with the internet. But the point I wanted to get at here is that, well, what is the nature of woman? Well, you can see that a whole lot more clearly now in the internet age than you ever could before. So when I think it was Bobby Brown. Yeah, Bobby Brown. Was it Chris Brown? It's Chris Brown, who with Rihanna. Rihanna. Why did I think Bobby Brown? I got there.
Yeah, Bobby's the one that destroyed.
That was the 80s, right? Prerogative. So when that happened, when Rihanna was abused by Chris Brown on Twitter, you had all these women saying, he can beat me anytime. I'll be happy to take a black guy for that guy, right? Yeah. You know, and it's like, so it comes out. Or you see, I think we're more aware of women's natures now, especially when it comes to incarcerated criminals, right? I mean, we want to call it like a disorder. We want to say it's hybristophilia, right? Yeah. Well, what that is that's women's natural propensity to be attracted to violent men in prison, right? Same thing with Nicholas Cruz, had a teenage fangirl club as soon as he got incarcerated.
Yeah.
Same thing with any mass murderer, any mass shooter.
I was just talking about that with somebody today. Ted Bundy's got a kid. I think Charlie Manson's got a kid. Who else? Jeffrey Dahmer's got a kid. What woman in their right, by the way, imagine being that kid, tell me a little bit about your dad. It's like, come on, man. Are you serious?
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly. Well, and then, so what does that say? And it's not like he could get out in the wild.
No,
or
they're coming to him. They're coming to him.
They're coming to him.
Yeah.
And so,
because it's the bad boy. They want the bad boy.
The internet,
they want the bad boy seed.
But see, the internet exposes women's true nature right now. And so the fact that you and I or anybody else in the manosphere is talking about this is the reason it would be so highly offensive is because we're analyzing some very unflattering truths about human nature. Now, of course, what do women say? Well, hybristophilia is a disorder, or those are damaged women, but it's only women who are doing this, and it's like, well, maybe you have a case for damaged women, but I think that the sheer number of women who are willing to do that, it's not just a disorder. There's something evolutionarily triggering in these women that they want to, they will jump through the hoops of going through the, penitentiary system to get to those guys. Why is that? Or why is it, does the prison system separate female guards from the male population of the prisons? Well, because they fall in love with those guys and they try to bust them out of there.
Yeah.
Okay, are they damaged too? I mean, are all these women damaged? No, they're not. They're following that nature. Right?
It's an intuitive thirst.
Right.
They want the alpha. They want the alpha. They can't have the alpha sometimes, but they want the alpha.
And it's an alpha that's in or at least perceptually, it's an alpha that's in a very controlled environment, right? It's not like a violent.
Cage is like going to the zoo, man.
Yeah, he's like exactly. Cage going.
Yeah.
That's a really good example. That's a really good analogy. Yeah. It's like going to the zoo. But so we have the reason I wanted to talk about that is because we have this new understanding of women's nature, and I think that it becomes more and more difficult for guys. Even you don't even have to be in the manosphere. It's just average, regular blue pill beta guys have a real trouble trusting women because they're more exposed to the truths of women's nature. So as the feminine imperative, as the gynocracy, whatever, as the feminine primary social order expands, it becomes unignorable even to just average regular guys. And so what happens is they have a lot of trouble trusting women, right? And so the problem with that is like, if you don't trust women, then you are just simply going to isolate yourself and say, I don't want to have anything to do with them. I'm going to, or it's like another good example of this. Powerful men hide behind open doors, right? Like men don't want to work with women in the workplace now because they are concerned. They don't think that they can trust women not to, say something false against them, and they would have to end up losing their livelihood, losing their career, maybe losing the capacity to make money that they spent a lot of money on, getting a college degree. All of that's out the window now, right? All it takes is not even an allegation, just the suspicion of misconduct is enough to ruin a guy. So how do you trust women?
Let me throw this your way, because you talked about, remember your dad's test with you and your brother, the $20 bill. Mm-hmm. What is the test? How do men vet a woman for trustworthiness? And there's obviously going to be degrees too. I can't trust you worth of crap at the very bottom, but I mean, there's going to be degrees. There's sort of a hierarchy there. So how does a guy properly vet a woman for trustworthiness?
Well, I think that, again, that comes from within the guy first. Okay. It's one thing for a weaker, more beta blue pill guy to throw out some sort of like trust test, because it seems like he's reacting. It seems like he is like pouting, or like, I'm going to try to trust you. I'm going to see, it's like this, how do you vet for trust without it seeming like distrust, I think is the real question. But, so like, let's just say you're a red pill guy, you're aware of intersexual dynamics, all this other stuff. How do you vet for trust? I think you need to be aware of your surroundings, because what happens is if you try to test a woman, you're doing what's called the observer effect, or the Hawthorne effect. Okay?
But they do that with Russell with the shit test, right?
Yeah, well, they do that all the time, but women shit test unconsciously. I mean, that's not to say that they don't do it consciously as well, but like 9 times out of 10, they're not trying to do it just to like be, you know, a little bitchy. They're shit testing men because that's part of women's nature, is to shit test men. They have to, because that's part of women's hypergamous filter. But like for guys, I think what if you're going to test for trustworthiness, you can't make some overt test. You have to pay attention to what she does, and you have to pay attention to, unfortunately, what she says, and see how those two coincide. What is her, like the medium is the message. What is her behavior telling you? Does her behavior tell you that she is somebody that you can trust these things with? Like,
let me give you an example. Okay. In fact, if you go to my Twitter account, twitter.com PC1170, up at the top, don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do. Why? Because our actions always betray us. Okay. Back to love, which could be a compartment word. Woman tells you she loves you. What do her actions say? Does she do things that are inconvenient for her? Does she wake up in the early morning hours to see you off at the airport, or pick you up at the airport? Does she have sex with you when she's not feeling really good, when she's sick? I mean, all of those actions tell you what she really does. You know, she does love you. She shows you through her actions. Talk is cheap. You know, words are a dime a dozen, right? But it's going to be the same with trust. What is she showing you that proves to you that she is trustworthy?
Right. What is she showing you? Well, again, what are her behaviors? First of all, is like, for instance, I'm just going to throw this out there. Is your girlfriend always going out on girls' nights out? Right? Is that something that she feels needs to be a priority in her life? Well, why does she feel that way? Is she somebody that you could trust on a girls' night out? I think that if a woman genuinely has a desire for the guy that she's with, that doesn't even enter into her brain. That's it's not even an afterthought to do something like that. That's not to say that, Mrs. Tomasi hasn't gone and had fun with her friends once or twice, but it's not like this regular thing. Right. And it's like, will she decline opportunities for you because you are a better opportunity than those other opportunities? That's a really good. Well, first of all, that relates back to frame, but it also is a sense of trust. Like, is she more into you than she would be for going and doing? Like, is she going to decline opportunities that she would have? Good opportunities. But
perfect example. Somebody, say there was something she wanted, I don't know, see on a Thursday night, or do on a Thursday night, go somewhere on a Thursday night, not necessarily with girlfriends or anything, but something that she thought was important to her, but she had an opportunity to see you. She blows that off to see you. That's a keep.
Yeah, what is she doing? Here's a good question. What is she doing that implies that you are the first thing on her mind? Like, is she qualifying herself to you naturally? Right. You don't have to tell her these things. You don't have to beat her over the head with it. You don't have to use overt dread, but is her imagination working in your favor already? Are you her first thought? Again, you want. When it comes to trusting a woman, I like the trust but verify, but the verify part is, what is she doing? It's one thing for her to say, oh, you can trust me implicitly, and then she goes off and runs off and has, or she goes to Vegas with her girlfriends for a 3-day weekend, right? Okay. And then suddenly, I think what guys do is they are taught to ignore their instincts. We're taught to, I have a great post called Gut Check, right?
Yeah.
And in that post, I even talked about this myself. It's like, I had an initial impulse with my wife one time where I was jealous, or I was suspicious, right?
She was driving in the wrong direction.
She was driving in the wrong direction one time, and I'm like, what the hell is she doing, driving here or whatever? And of course, what's the first thing? You have this suspicious nature because something in your environment is out of whack. It's out. And so what we're taught as guys is that, oh, it's okay. Girls, if she says she loves you, she can go off to Vegas and do whatever she wants, or you don't want to be a control freak. You don't want to be a possessive guy, right? Aren't you secure in your masculinity enough to let her go on and do a thing?
It's back to, you got a small dick again. That's the same thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Aren't you secure? And I would say this: I'm secure enough in my masculinity to understand what that implies. That's what I would say.
Well, turn it around on women though. You know, what girlfriend out there, what wife would be okay with her husband going to the strip club on Saturday night with a bunch of his buddies? Because I love you.
Trust you.
I love you. Oh, you trust me, don't you? You know, aren't you secure enough in your, feminine nature, whatever? Of course, they're going to be, suspicious of that.
And then here's the thing. And here's the thing. Maybe that's true. Maybe you are trustworthy enough to go hang out with your friends, to go to a bachelor's party, right? At a strip club. Okay. Maybe that's awesome. Great. If you have that kind of relationship, but the fact of the matter is we are wired to be suspicious. We are wired to be jealous. We are wired. Yeah, you want to know, here's another good one. Is your wife or is your girlfriend jealous of you? I think it was Mystery once said that a woman doesn't love you until she has become jealous for you, until she is jealous of the attention that other women are giving you or that you're giving to them. When she becomes jealous, that's where, this sounds really, really bad, but when that woman becomes jealous of you, that's when you know that you're up here for her, right? And you're not just out here, you're up in here. She's thinking about you, right? She's thinking about you as a high value hypergamous opportunity that she doesn't want to miss out on. And that's just the nuts and bolts of it. If you want to talk about emotions and whatever else, fine. But I'm just saying, from an evolutionary standpoint, if she is not jealous of you, that's where that stems from. Why was I jealous, or why was I suspicious of my wife when I saw her driving that one time, right? Why was I like that? Well, because in the back of my head, something's out of whack. But I have this natural proclivity to wonder whether my investment in that person is well placed. Is my trust well placed in that? Because really, that's what it comes down to. Is like until we were able to verify, paternity, right, men simply had to trust women that the kid was theirs.
Yep.
And so because of that investment cost, we developed all of these psychological, schemas to vet for that trust, to say, can I trust that person enough to like, I'm going to put my sexual strategy on hold. I'm not going to look for any other girls. I'm going to forsake all, right? There's the wedding vows. I'm going to forsake all others for you. The deal is you have my kid. The deal is you say you are who you actually are.
Yeah.
And I think that we as guys are, well, first of all, we're taught to sublimate that. We're taught we're shamed for even having that thought, but we still have that thought.
I was at Walgreens the other day, and I didn't even know these were available. 24-hour paternity tests.
Right.
Bro, there's a stack of them. There's a stack of them on the shelf. Something you said Friday when you were talking about your dad, I got so much feedback on. You mentioned that your dad told you that you asked him why he got married. Mm-hmm. And he said, it seemed like a good idea at the time. I can't tell you how many guys said, that's me, because 10, 15, 20 years ago, it seemed like a good idea, but right now, not so much.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far off topic, but like that goes back to that. Actually, that incident when I talked to my dad, that woke me up to the myth of the quality woman.
Right.
Because every woman is quality when you're first meeting her. We wouldn't marry her if you didn't think, look in the mirror and go, yeah, she's a really great gal. I think I really want to spend the rest of my life with her. Right. Of course she's quality. That's what I mean. Like when guys say, well, aren't there like qualitative differences between men and women? Yeah, of course there are. All I'm saying is that's an ideal. That's what, that's what we trick ourselves with. We think she's a quality woman, like before you say I do. And then when you're putting the ink on the divorce papers, then she's that bitch and you couldn't believe how she could do that to you.
Right.
Hey, we got this one. I got to hit this. Ben Edwards, $10 super chat. I am a nursing student and will be graduating this fall. How do I navigate through school and later job in my profession that is predominantly feminine?
It's like me going into teaching. That's a profession that is dominated by females. Yes. You're gonna be in the minority.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I can tell you firsthand. I don't know about you, but I can tell you firsthand that I have firsthand experience with people in the medical industry because that's what my wife does. My wife,
Right.
I'm not going to tell you what she does, but she has
I've
worked in the
got
hospital for a very long time.
got 6 nurses in my family. I've got my brother Phil was a nurse, but then he became a nurse anesthetist, and my brother-in-law is a doctor. A quick story here about my mom. Okay, my mom, when I was a kid, my mom worked nights as a head nurse at one of the local hospitals where I lived, and she would come home, and one of the things she taught us, she says, never, ever, ever talk about your spouse at work. And nurses are some of the worst. Okay.
Mhm.
Where she said, everybody coming to work, they start bitching and moaning, complaining about their husband. Then everybody else jumps on board too. And before you know it, 9 times out of 10, they're getting divorced. She says, your marriage is sacrosanct. It's private. You got to keep it that way. You don't share intimate details of that relationship with other people because it can be used against you.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason for me to open up like I did Friday on the program about my dad. It took me a long time to get there because I am a very private person, very protective of those close to me. And it's the way I was conditioned and taught by my parents.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'll just throw this out there too. Is like I listen to my wife in our marriage for going on 23 years now. I think my wife has probably worked at least 7 different hospitals, I think. And in every single one of these, there is always drama going on particularly in the nursing department too. But there's always who's screwing who and who's not screwing who. And I can't believe that they did this. Or remember, it's you're in a feminine primary workplace.
There's always drama.
You want some advice on this? I forget the guy's name, but I would say, first of all, be red pill aware and look at that situation in the sense that it is a feminine primary workplace culture. Okay. Right. So and I think that you need to, even in that situation, you really need to be even more careful as a guy in the Me Too era than even like, say, working as a teacher or something. Absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. So be very careful of that. But I think just stay on top of your game. Don't date any of them. As much as you might want to. It's great if you're like on the outside like me and you're dating somebody who's a woman who's a medical professional, because they tend to be kind of like, I don't want to call them sluts, but they tend to be a little bit more sexual than others. Maybe that's because they deal with life or death every day. I don't know that for a fact. The other thing is, like, I've also found that, my wife is actually one of probably like 4 women I've actually dated in the past who were medical professionals, and pretty much every one of them, including my wife, they tend to be a little bit more self-conscious than other people. And I think that, again, is working because they're working with everybody from just the average Joe to the dregs of the universe. So understand that affects them. Like, I don't understand. Like, my wife has worked in surgery and in the ER and stuff, and she's seen some pretty gnarly shit.
Right.
And so she would tell me stuff that like would just make my stomach like really, like queasy kind of thing. But they see this every day. So think about how that affects them as a person too. And understand that's going to have, that's an environmental effect that's going to have an effect on their psyche.
I got a good friend that's a female nurse, and because of that, she's always preferred just to have men. She relates to men better than she does to women, because women are so much drama, so much cattiness.
Yeah, they tend. I will say this is that the nurses and my wife have all been like that. They've all looked for like strong, masculine, dominant guys, and I think probably a result of that is because they deal with women so much at work that they don't want to deal with another woman when they get home. I should also say this, this is not really to the guy who gave us a super, but women in the hospital, I mean, nurses, you got to do a lot of work to get where you're at. If you're an X-ray tech, your CT tech, what's the other one that chicks do? Ultrasound, that goes OBGYN, if you're in the NICU, whatever.
Right.
You're dealing with a lot of women. There might be some guys in there, but the power dynamics in a hospital is you've got these women who are very entitled, very empowered women in the medical field, but then you get guys who are like the anesthesiologists, the guys who are the surgeons, the guys who are making like tons of money. So don't think for a second that those women aren't there hoping that the guy in radiology is going to want to get with them. So.
Yeah, the medical profession, especially with my my brother-in-law, I can't tell you. I've seen this with dentists too, for some reason. But they'll get married. They tend to get married early while they're in school. Whoever the wife is that helps them get through school. Once they're out, once they get established, well, guess what? It's time for a new model, and he's hooked up with another nurse or somebody like that.
Let's just leave it at this. There's a reason why General Hospital was a soap opera. That's why.
Because that's real. That's real.
Or like, remember ER with George Clooney back in the 90s? Yeah, there's a reason for that, because that's what it was like.
I want to make sure we get to the bonus today.
Bonus question.
Yeah, but do you want anything else on the trust issue?
All right. Look, I just want to double down on this really quickly and say that I understand that a lot of guys, particularly when they can't cross that abyss, when they unplug from being blue pill and they see the real nature of women, they understand how women's hypergamy prompts them to certain behaviors, and they don't want to have anything to do with that. I can't trust a woman not to be hypergamous, right? They can't play. What they're really saying is they're saying, I can't play this game, and I don't want to play this game because I can't trust a woman to be any. I can trust a woman. I can trust her to be a woman. I can trust her to be hypergamous. I can trust her to do the things that are within a woman's nature. Okay. Right. At that point, you have to ask yourself, is this something that I want to deal with, or is this not something that I want to deal with? So it's a value call at that point. I get it. I understand that. I know that MGTOWs love this shit. It's I can't trust a woman, so I'm not gonna have anything to do with it. Or it's like, well, if a girl wants to just drop by and give me a blowjob, I'll be fine. That'll be great. And then I can't possibly trust a woman.
Why would she want to do that?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
why would she want to do that?
And this is what I've always said is like, you can't check out of the game entirely. Okay. You're going to be dealing with women, whether it's your mom, whether it's your sister, even if you say, I'm never going to date again. Okay, fine. You're still going to deal with your mom. You're just going to deal with your grandma. You're going to deal with your sister, your aunt, the women that you have to work with, those kind of things. So there comes a point where you have to take that leap of faith, or you don't. Fine. If you don't, great. If that's where you're at, fine. But if it is something that you want, if you want to have a family, if you want to have a relationship with a woman, if you want to try to establish a complementary relationship with a woman, you're going to have to trust at some point. So what does that look like to you is really kind of subjective. It's up to you.
All right. Question on this. Remember, we had Stephen call into my local program last week. This is the guy that got cheated on 4 times, and he still wasn't willing to divorce his wife. She divorced him, and she got a green card out of that. Remember? So I'll tell you where I am on the trust issue. I've got a philosophy. Everybody gets one chance to burn me. Okay. Once you burnt me, that's it. You're dead to me. You're literally dead. I'm not going to kill you. You no longer exist in my world. And I've cut people off. Okay. So when it comes to women, when it comes to relationships, especially marriage or a long-term relationship with a woman, what are we've got the iron rules of Tomasi. What does Rollo say about, and obviously it's different degrees, maybe you had the car keys and you didn't tell me, but I mean, when you've had a major violation of trust, what is your rule of thumb?
I think that there are degrees,
right?
Of violations of trust. Okay,
it's
for instance, like if I say, hey, honey, I need you to go pick up some dog food on the way home, and she forgets.
Minor.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Well, it's not like okay, whatever, right? Okay. But let's say infidelity. If a woman cheats on you, there's guys that will go like that one dude you were talking about, who 4 times, 4 different dudes.
Yeah.
After the first one wasn't enough for you to tell. Yeah. Here's the thing is and one of the reasons I like to talk about issues of trust is because the first thing that most marriage counselors will say is like, well, we need to rebuild the trust. No, it's not trust. It's desire. Your wife has no desire to fuck you. That's why she cheated on you. Simple, dead, go home. Here, don't even give me the $75 for the hour.
There it is.
That's your answer.
The ruthless compassion. That's what we're talking about,
ruthless compassion. Right. That's the title of this show. And so if that's the case, then you need to, I think most beta blue pill guys are optionless. So they're willing to put up with that. Like the guy who had called into your show that one time, he's optionless.
You asked him on air, do you have any other options?
Any other options? That's why it is very important. That's why I start at the very beginning of The Rational Male spin more plates, date non-exclusively. I'm not saying you have to screw every single girl. I'm just saying that you have to have that mindset. You have to say, if this doesn't pan out, I've got 2 other girls on speed dial that will pan out, right? That keeps you from soulmate myth. That keeps you from one-itis. That keeps you from a lot of other things where you would like over-invest yourself emotionally into something, right? But what's the opposite of that? The opposite is like the guy who is calling. These the beta guys who believe in the soulmate myth. They, oh well, it was just one time. What was it? She was drunk. He was cute, and one thing led to another. Right. Remember that. I was drunk. He was cute, and one thing led to the other.
A lot of guys, and like 80% of guys would probably say, "Oh, that's a one. I get it. They're going to give him another pass."
Exactly, and I know guys who have done that. That has always been the hardest rule, or hard and fast rule, because if that is confirmation, infidelity, by the way, is confirmation that a woman has no desire for you. Okay, there's no greater confirmation than that. So I think that if, like, for instance, like say, God forbid, my wife would cheat on me or something like that, I'd be done. I'd be out. I would be out the next day, because I understand that is a well, first of all, it's a breaking of trust. Got it. But it's more important that it is a confirmation of a lack of desire. And once you cross over into that, there ain't no going back. And so at that point, it's better. And another iron rule of Tomasi, it's better for you to invest yourself in new opportunities than it is to try to repair that old damaged relationship. Because at every time you're repairing that relationship, every time there's a suspicion of distrust, you're going to think about that time. That's going to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room for the rest of your life.
I don't, I mentioned before, trust, it generally, it takes a long time to build it. Once it's violated, it's difficult, if not impossible, to bring back. I really think it's virtually impossible to certainly bring back that level of trust that was initially there. You may be able to trust again, but always in the back of your head.
Right.
There's going to be that seed of doubt. That seed of doubt. You're
still going to be living with whatever your imagination has created for you about that entire situation. Leave. Don't. Well, maybe we can work it out. No. That is the end. And you know what? I would tell my wife the same thing. If I ever cheated on you, you have every right to leave me. Because that is a lack of desire.
So we had a guy that called in from my program, longtime listener. He's about 30-ish. He is an heir apparent to an awful lot of money, right? He took up with this single mom who wasn't even divorced yet, just separated from her husband. And she's got 2 kids, okay? And she sees him as her golden ticket. This is the one, I think you remember the story, where he found out that she was cheating. She was having a threesome. Her and another married lady were having a threesome with a local doctor who's single, right? And he's been listening to you. We did a whole local program on him. Guess what? He's back with her. He's sinking back with her, and he's helping her renovate her house now. She saw women have this like almost like X-ray vision. They can see a beta a mile away. Somebody that's going to be able to be taken advantage of. He's a nice guy. He's too nice, and he's got lots of money. She's his golden ticket, and he goes back because like you say, he doesn't have any other options.
Optionless, yes. And that's the thing is like, I'm looking in the chat here, and everybody's like, no, you can never trust a woman. Okay, well, at what point do you? At what point do you say, you know what, the only way I can have a relationship? Well, why? Okay, let's take it out of the realm of women. At what point can you trust a guy? At what point can you trust the government? At what point can you trust your bank? At what point can you trust whatever? You can't. I mean, if that's the case, at some point you have to at least put yourself out there. If you get burned, you get burned. Okay, fine. Right. There are ways to mitigate that risk. Okay. One of them, of course, is what I wrote about in the pet. Always be aware of that. Always understand that. Like guys will say, well, Rollo what would you like me to do? Would you like me to divorce my wife? Is that what would that make me like your ideal of an alpha is to be just like you? No, I have been doing it for 23 years. Do I know that it could all end tomorrow? Do I know that half of my shit could be gone tomorrow? Yes, I understand that. But I want to have a wife. I want to have a relationship with a woman. I want to have a daughter. I want to be able to grow old with somebody, right? There's those things that I think we want to have for our lives. Right. But I think a lot of people think that they're cut off from that. Like they're because of the nature of women. Like, here's the thing. Guys do have successful marriages with women.
Yeah.
Wow, they actually have a relationship with a woman that can be based on mutual trust, where it's like, I'm not going to screw you, you're not going to screw me, and we're going to get along and we're going to have a life together because you respect me as a man and I'm with you. So
here's another reason. This is something you've talked about too before in some of your books. Even if you're in a long-term relationship, let's say you're married for 10, 15, 20 years, okay? It's still not in your best interest to reveal everything about yourself to the woman. Why? Because you want to remain a mystery. You want to remain an enigma.
Mhm.
Women don't want you to tell them everything. You've talked about this time and time again. They want to figure it out on their own. That's their job. And there is a level of excitement there in not knowing everything that factors into the desire. That's what makes you hot. You can still be hot 15, 20, 25 years down the road, but the guy that comes out like in the first year and tells her everything there is to know, including, right, I don't know what happened in second grade or something like that. You've destroyed the mystery.
Yeah. I'm looking at the chat here while we're doing this, but it's like, I think that there, in any relationship, whether it's with your family or with a girl or whatever, there's always like, unless I can get inside your head and
right,
think and understand what your thoughts are and what your motivations are,
right,
there's always going to be a level of trust. Like when I'm talking to you, when I'm talking to the guys at the 21 convention, when I'm talking to just anybody on the Red Man group, whatever, there has to be this trust that I know that they're on the same page with me, right? I'm not going to go.
We have built a trust. We built a rapport over the airwaves because I'm not going to ambush you. I'm not going to burn you. I'm
not going to create a cooperative relationship with somebody that I don't trust, period.
Right.
And whether that's a guy or I'm a freaking dog. I'm not going to form a relationship if I don't trust that animal to do what that animal is going to do.
Somebody else has one up here. It says, do you trust a woman that lies about her notch count? First of all, you should never be discussing your notch count with each other. Don't you agree with that? That's a bad road to go down. It never ends well, especially
the discussion
with the guy. It's one of your iron rules.
Well, and here's the other thing is like, it's actually pretty easy to understand whether a woman has had plenty of lovers before you or not. You don't have to have that conversation if you understand. If you understand the process here, okay? Right. When you're talking about it, and I keep hammering this home, observing a process changes the process. So if you're talking about it and you're doing that, if you're not intuiting it, if you're not interpreting what she's telling you, I mean, you can tell if a chick is a slut. Okay, you can tell. Like we were talking about this on the Red Man group about like tattoos and piercings and stuff like that. Okay, I mean, there's telltale signs, right? So, anyways, I got Red Man on here. I got to hit him again. A $10 super chat. It says, last time some dude asked you, her girl didn't dare anybody like him or date anybody like him, you told him he was beta buck. So that means it's game over because you can only put on so much muscle. It depends on the genetics and the height. Well, okay. Once again, this is guys wanting to believe that hypergamy is a straitjacket. Okay. And there's a reason I put the misconceptions about hypergamy essay is in the description here. Does that mean it's game over? Like guys think that this is that the default is that if you get with a woman and then again, this comes back to trust issues. If you get with a woman and she commits to you in some fashion, that you are only it's only your turn with her until she finds somebody better, right? Like as soon as she finds a guy who is even just measurably a little bit better than you, she's going to dump you and she's going to go after that guy. Well, let's look at why this is a myth. Okay.
Donovan says she was never really yours. Just
only your turn. And that's true. And you want to know what you should do. You should keep that in the back of your mind when you're dealing with women. And it's just your turn, right? Don't get possessive of that woman. Okay. So that's a first thing. The other thing is that when guys throw this out there, they make women seem like a one size fits all. Like if a woman is an 8, she's always like this. If a woman is a 7, she's always like this. If she's a 6, she's always like this. And there's no variables included in that. Like they don't take into account maybe the girl's religious. Maybe the
Right.
girl has been raised in a different way. Maybe the girl's from a different culture. Maybe she's a different ethnicity. Maybe she has a different thing. So before the sexual revolution, and I've said this a million freaking times. So before the sexual revolution, there were buffers on hypergamy. Okay, before HBC, hormonal birth control, there were buffers, social and religious.
There was
buffers.
a stigma associated with
There's
having a child out of
stigmas
wedlock.
associated.
Yeah.
There's all that. Okay, now granted, most of that shit is gone, right? Okay, but and so that's how we know more about hypergamy now.
Right.
But there are still variables in each woman that, like, say, what if you have a really hot chick and you're a dominant guy, like you got a 9, okay, and you've got a dominant personality, and she just sees you as the world, right? And she has low self-esteem. Is she going to go and say, well, I need to get with a guy who's a little bit hotter than him? No, because she still, like, if you have a woman who is a 9 and she believes she's a 7, right? Is she going to go for a guy who's a 10? Or is she going to go for a guy who's like an 8? There's so many buffers, and there's so many like variables that modify whether or not a woman is going to. Like, here's another thing: would a woman do that? Yeah, but does that woman have the opportunity to do that? Can she? How old is she? She's 32 years old, and her priorities have changed. Well, if a better guy came along and she's already invested in you, and you're a pretty great guy already, and you're staying on top of your game, is she going to, oh, you know what? Sorry, honey, I got to go fuck this guy over here. That's not going to happen. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because what you don't understand, or what guys fail to grasp primarily, because they give up, is because they don't understand that it's a lot of a woman's attraction to you. And I don't say arousal, I said attraction to you is based on your burden of performance. Okay. What are you doing? Are you and here's another thing, right? A woman is a 9 when she's 24 years old. Well, when she's 34 years old, she's not a 9 anymore. She's a 7 now. Okay. She's still hypergamous, right?
Still thinking like a 9?
Is she still thinking like a 9, or has she actually come into some like reality? Does she have a more realistic outlook on what it is, what her position is in the sexual marketplace? So understand this: hypergamy is not a straitjacket. It is not always going to be the way that it is. I can even make comparisons to ovulatory shift. A woman is going to be more predisposed to like masculine alpha dudes when she's in her proliferative phase than she would be in her luteal phase. Does that mean if she's in her luteal phase, does that mean she's going to cheat on you, or is it only in her proliferative phase?
Here's the other thing too. It's the ships that never pass in the night kind of thing. Women, the younger they are, the more options they have. The older they get, the fewer options they have. Guys, it's the opposite.
Perishable.
And that's right. Once you talk about getting to 30, and a lot of guys, their careers are just taking off. Mm-hmm. And if they take good care of themselves, they're going to have more and more options into their 40s, 50s, sometimes even 60s.
Right. And see that attraction, arousal, all that stuff, hypergamy in general doesn't happen in a vacuum. And I think that's what a lot of guys want to be doom and gloom, because they want to fit it into that vacuum. They want to say it's only this way. Yeah. Well, there are so many variables between other people. Like, I mean, I don't know if you know anybody like this. Okay. I know guys who are like, I would say, like, from a sexual market value point, they are like a 6, and they're with like a really hot chick, right? Mm-hmm. There is something that they have. There's a personality trait that they have. Mm-hmm. Maybe they got a 10-inch cock, maybe whatever, who knows why, but there's a reason why that really hot, like 8 or 9, is with that guy who's a 6.
Big bank account.
Why is that? What does that guy have that offsets that deficit? Right? Like, maybe the guy is like 5'5", right? And he's with a girl who's like this Amazon beauty, right? Why is that? Because I have this, it reminded me of this picture. I have this one essay called Arm Candy. And I think it has the guy who wrote, was Salman Rushdie. Salman Rushdie has a hot ass wife. And really? I'm like, I don't even know how the hell that happened. Or here's another really good one. What's the guy who does Dilbert? John
Scott Adams. Yeah,
Scott Adams, his
by the
girlfriend.
way, when he started doing his
Holy
he started doing his podcast, and you see
Yeah.
this, like, she's almost like a college age chick
Yes.
with an Instagram account and like 75 million followers or something like that. It's like, who's that? Because it looks like it would be his daughter, right?
Right. And so and what we look at an imbalance there. That's why we go, holy shit, right? Because we know that there's a concept called the social matching theory, that people who are of, like sexual market value should it's also called dissociative mating theory. Should
plus
things being equal,
he'll be shamed for the age thing too, because he's I don't know how old he's
shamed by people he doesn't give a shit about.
Yeah, because he's like Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson's what, 64, and he's got a 28-year-old girlfriend, right? And it's like, well, that's a dirty old man. But if he dated a woman his own age, women out there, some women, not all, would go, well, that's more respectable, because at least he's dating people his own age.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dating people his own age, and it's like the shame he would get, he doesn't care about, But again, that's actually a pretty good.
He gives zero, right?
Yeah.
There.
Well, that's a pretty good example, because like, here's a guy. I mean, granted, Scott Adams has a lot of money. Let's not beat around the bush here. He's got Dilbert, and God only knows what that
twice too.
God only knows what that trademark is worth, right? So but I would say this. I would say that Scott Adams is woke enough to understand his position in all of that. So how does that modify your game? How does that modify your understanding of hypergamy? Do you think that Scott Adams doesn't know that there is a great big imbalance between him and the girl?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny, when I went back home to see my dad, I'm the oldest of 13, but I got seven brothers, right? And we're sitting around. Well, two of them aren't married. Two of the youngest ones are priests, the twins. But I'm sitting around with my other brothers and my brother Charles. We were talking about pets and things that ruin the house. And I made some mention. I said, if I ever get married again, right? I said, I'm going to have a prenup that specifies no dogs, no cats. I said, we can never have anything nice. Everything's got to be ruined. It's either ruined by the pets or the kids, right? My brother Charles looks at me and goes, what the hell's wrong with you? He says, why would you get married again? Have you learned nothing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was kind of that deal. So, but
and then the other side of this whole thing is the genetics is all, right? There's the only thing that matters is like how much muscle you have, if you have a cute face, you have a symmetrical body, whatever.
That's just superficial, man. It's,
okay. Well, no, it's not superficial. I think that it's very, very important, but it's not the only thing.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
It's like, is it a very important thing? Is it like number one on the list? Yes, it is. Yeah. But it's like, and what's
because guys are visual.
That's interesting. I'm glad we got to this, because like, I was talking with my daughter last night, and she was talking about like Tinder and how her girlfriends were on Tinder and so on. And I told her, I said, that is very Darwinian right there. And she's like, well, I like to look at I want to read the guys like bios or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but you don't get to read the guy's bio unless he's cute to begin with, unless there's something there, unless there's some kind of physical attraction. That's why I separate arousal from attraction.
That's like guys back in the day would tell you they read Playboy for the articles. They bought Playboy for the articles. You don't buy Playboy for the articles. You bought it for the pictures. Come on.
Well, I mean, but then I told her this. I said, okay, if a guy is just kind of borderline, she's like, oh yeah, that's when they'll read it, right? When the guy is kind of cute, or he seems attainable, or he has a look of attainability to him, then they might read the bio. But usually it's that's all it is.
I used the wrong term with the physical appearance of being superficial. I think that is more important when a guy's younger. Not that it isn't when it's older, but when you get your 30s, 40s, 50s. Women, if you're in good shape, that's going to attract women. That's going to get the initial look, okay? But they're much more interested in because guys are objects of success. We're success objects. Mm-hmm. Where we said women were sex objects. If you're successful, man, that's going to trump anything. You could be Danny DeVito, but if you're funny, you got a lot of money, all of a sudden you're interested. I'm taking a look at you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I bet there still has to be that physical attraction side of things. There still has to be that initial arousal. I laugh my ass off when women go, if you're just funny, then you'll be attracted.
You froze up on me there, buddy. You still there? I'm standing by. Rollo.
Women always is you. I don't think
you with me? Can you see me? I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're still like freezing and breaking up.
Oh,
do you want to both reconnect?
Why? Connection. Hold on.
All right.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Good, good. I can hear you.
You're back. Okay. All right. Gosh, you know, I don't know what I'm going to have to plug directly using the wireless here. So maybe that's it.
Hey, I want to get to that bonus question. We got to do.
All right. Let's do that.
Okay?
Let's
So
do that.
what defines a real man, and how the lie of authenticity is used against men, sort of to shame them?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, again, we started the show out with container words. That's another one. What is a real man, right? What we were talking about before. What it's the no true such anything you want. A man loves Jesus. A real man respects women. A real man changes diets. It's a bumper sticker right now. I think that's it. Kind of masculinity. Fill that container with a damn near anything, whatever your pet ideology is.
Right.
So what for a guy who's a real man? Somebody sent me a meme that said, "Real men don't give a shit."
You're still freezing up there. You want to just reconnect real quick?
Because one second, give me 1 sec.
All right.
By breaking that, oh, how
now? You broke off. I'm thinking you're going to pop up here again. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Are you?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Anyways, just to make this is a container word. It's a container term. And a lot of people get bent out about this. I think we spend more time debating about, you know, the actual little pet peeve that you fit into that container than you do the actual container. So I think the first thing is you have to understand that that's what that is. Second of all is I think that if you're going to look for authenticity in something, like I think that's really what the question is. What does a real man do? Right? What is authentic masculinity, and what is fake authenticity? You know, or what is fake masculinity? I guess is what we're talking about.
So do you just reject the terminology altogether when somebody says a real man?
A real man. Well, yeah, I do. Whenever I look at that, because again, it's something. It's a convenient way to get across an ideological perspective, is what it is. Yeah. And I would say 9 times out of 10, when it's guys who are saying something like that, especially when it's something like, "Oh, a real man respects women," that guy is trying. That's a dating profile, is what that is. That's qualifying yourself to women when you do that. Because if you're gonna go like, that's a big deal. Like I think what guys understand this intrinsically is they understand what demonstrating higher value is. They just do it like shit. That's what they don't know what they're doing. So they think that if they say something like that, like a real man does what I do, right? It's always something that qualifies them as a real man, right? And then, okay, that's one aspect of it, because it's like, you're not authentic unless you act like me. That's what that's saying.
Drink beer, watch football. That's what
right.
A
real man does.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, you could say something like that just as well, but you have to pick apart why that person is saying that, because almost all the time it's usually a qualification. It's like announcing to the world that you are on board with women. You're not like other guys. That is the primary. Like if you're talking about like beta game is based on female identification. It's guys who believe that the more alike they are with women, the more women will like them. Right. The more that they want to, the more they get in touch with their feminine side. Right. Then the more attractive they'll be. Why wouldn't they? They've been taught that since they were 5 years old. So making these big declarations in the age of the internet, where you can reach, 40,000 people with one tweet, and how many of those might be attractive women. Right. And so what it is it's a subjective qualifier for the guy who's saying it, because what they're doing is they're trying to define authentic masculinity as the way that they believe. And they want to broadcast to the world that they are more evolved. Like,
when I hear it from women,
above all that base stuff.
When I hear it coming from women, though, it is used to shame men. A real man wouldn't do that. Right.
Well, that's another way of qualifying authenticity for guys. So what does a real man do? Well, we can break down a few things about, conventional masculinity that are, unique aspects of masculinity that are unique to men. Right. So we could say that, but people aren't interested in that. That's not what the statement is. Has nothing to do with what a real man actually is. It's
Right.
a qualifier, and it's about authenticity. And we should probably really talk about this on a full show. Is like, what does authenticity really entail? Like a guy, what is the saying? Like, to thine own self be true, right? Well, you get to decide what your own self is. I think what really bugs me today when it comes to issues of masculinity is that we have allowed women to define what masculinity should be for men, and anything that isn't like defined by the feminine imperative is a sham. It's an act. It's the masks that boys wear, right? There's a documentary called
there's a book on that. Yeah.
Masks that boys. So what that is that's one great big documentary or book or whatever. That is one great big container term, because anything that you don't, because what they think that if men don't think like women, then it's an act, because only women and only the way of thinking like a woman is authentic. That's the only valid, legitimate way to think, is like a woman.
So I'm getting stuff here on this. Go ahead. Finish your thought on that.
And anything else that doesn't qualify as that, it's an act that guys put on. This is bravado, that you have to be like this because you think, because this nebulous society has taught you that that's what you should do. That's bullshit. Okay. That is actually how men are. Okay. Men have, evolved mental firmware that is unique to men. Okay. Paternity is one of those things. Under, defining and ascertaining paternity is one. That's one big thing. But guys put on, guys like to amog other guys naturally. It's not because society taught them to do that. It's because that's the most natural deductive thing to do when they're competing for a mate, right? So we could say, well, men naturally form dominance hierarchies. They naturally form competence hierarchies. Well, if that dominance hierarchy doesn't serve the feminine imperative, then we got to make it an act. Then we got to say, well, that's just you're wearing a mask. You're not being the real you. No, I am being the real me.
But who can you see the real me? Can you see the real me? Real quick here, back to the trust thing. Fella says he's been listening to the whole show. He says, what the hell is the answer? What does Rollo say? Can you trust women? Is it yes or no?
You can trust women to be what women are going to be. You can trust women to be hypergamous. You can trust women to
You're frozen on me, buddy. We're never going to find the answer here. Come on. Mm-hmm.
There we go. I'm back.
You're back. What happened to you, buddy?
I don't know. I'm going to have to plug direct in here. I think I'm going to have to go straight into
either that or you're turning into a promo for the Disney movie Frozen.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah. Frozen on the screen.
Yeah. Okay.
So pick up where you left off.
I was just going to say,
can you trust women?
You can trust a woman to be a woman. Okay. You can trust a woman to act in accordance to the way that women have evolved as human beings. Can you trust them to do that? Yes. So from that perspective, how are you going to act with that woman? How are you going? Is she going to be loyal to you? Is she going to be a good wife? Is she going to be a good mother? Is she going to be somebody that you can trust with your life? Is she somebody that you can trust with your parental investment? Is she somebody along those lines? The only thing that you can do in that sense is understand who she is but also understand that is modified by who she is as a woman. Okay. Is she, and here's a good question. Is she in control of the aspects that prompt her to be what she is, to be a woman? Okay.
Such as, what do you mean by the aspect?
Well, let's just say, let's just throw this out there is, is she in control of her own hypergamy? Can she say, you know what, I've made a choice to be with this guy. I understand that I'm going to want to, like, oh, you know, what's funny is like, we always think of guys as being like out of control with their sexuality, right? We have to pound it into guys that we don't just walk up. Yeah, we have to have self-control, particularly over sexuality, because our sexuality is always on, right? And I think that once we got past like the sexual revolution and we got, you know, into the gynocracy that we are in right now, we expect women to police their own hypergamous natures. So what is men's sexual strategy? It's unlimited access to unlimited sexuality if a man could do that. But what do we teach them? We teach them to be in control of that. We don't teach women to be in control of their hypergamy right now. We used to have consequences for the worst aspects of women's hypergamy, whether that was religious or social or whatever else. But now we are handing that off to the individual woman. So can you trust a woman to be a woman? Yes. Can you trust her to, you know, to be a wife? Can you trust her to be a mother? Again, that is dependent upon the person themselves. What is their software? You know, I think that maybe this is a better answer. As I tend to look at, that's why I keep saying, you know, evolved mental firmware. That is what that woman is born with. What is her sexual imperatives are born with? That's her firmware. What is her software? What has she been taught? What does she believe? What does she understand consequences? You know, we make a real big mistake in thinking that men and women are exactly the same. So can you trust a woman? You can trust a woman to act in accordance with her hypergamy. You can trust her to act in accordance of being, you know, whatever her evolved mental firmware will prompt her to. But beyond that, it's a judgment call. It's a value call. Can you? I don't know. It's up to you.
All right, Rolo, let's wrap things up. Any closing words before we take off?
Let's see. I definitely am going to have to plug directly in here, apparently, because I think that is probably the wireless that's in this building. So I'm going to.
It was good up until the end.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we're doing really well. So, anyways, I am going to be doing Religion and Red Pill this week. That's another thing I'm planning on doing in this office. So watch that. That will be happening this week. Particularly.
Have you asked who you got on?
What's that? I don't have anybody on just at this. It might just be me solo at that point.
I still want to do one with you on the Catholic Church.
Oh, we can do that. Yeah. Oh. We should. I should also say I'm going to do an AMA pretty soon.
Okay.
And that will be sort of a test of me running OBS software on here. It's going to be a little bit more produced, I think. I'm kind of getting a little tired of just having like a background kind of thing going on, so I'm going to do something a little bit different. I wanted to sort of dress this place up, polish things up a little bit more. So that's going to be happening this week. So there will be an AMA, but understand that AMA is really more to test out the new software. And I think that's about it.
All right. And contact information, if you want to find me on Facebook, it's facebook.com/PC1170. On Twitter, we're probably even more active, twitter.com/PC1170. And of course, Rolo's always on my program on Talk Radio 1170, where Tulsa comes to talk and Oklahoma comes to listen, every Friday morning, 8:05 a.m. Central. And if you can't join us in real time, it's always available on the podcast immediately following the show. And I think Rolo still has them all archived on his website as well. So.
I do. And don't forget Red Man Group every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern now. And that show's starting to heat up. So check that out. All right.
Good program. Good
shot.
Yep, take care.